I would like perhaps counterintuitively to begin in the very last sentence of your book where you say, this drive to find a goal proportionate to life and to seek to know this goal with others is for virtue ethicists what the good life is all about. So unpack that for us and tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Sure. I mean, we're goal-driven creatures. I mean, that's one of the fundamental insights of philosophy for the last 2,400 years. It's just part of human nature to be always setting goals for yourself and then beating yourself up when you don't hit them. And one of the major takeaways that we want the reader to have from the book and our students to have from the God and the Good Life course is this idea that this is a great part of life, this part of you that's seeking a goal. But a lot of times the goals that we settle on, they come from kind of stupid places. They come from reading the news or from what your friends are doing or from insecurities that you have about yourself. And one thing that philosophy can do for us and that genuine friendships can do for us and that faith can do for us is help us take this goal-seeking impulse that we all have, but direct it to the kinds of goals that are going to be much more satisfying and that we're not going to lose them in February. And we're not going to beat ourselves up if we don't achieve them right away. And to get an understanding of what those goals are in our life, you have to do some pretty hard thinking and you got to have some interesting conversations. And that's where philosophy can be particularly helpful.
Yeah, it reminded me of a line that I really like. This is not an exact quote, but from another Notre Dame professor, Alistair McIntyre, that I've learned a lot from. He said something like, the key to a good life or central to living a good life is to ask what a good life entails. It's asking that kind of meta question, right? Which seems that we oftentimes, maybe we spend more time asking questions about what we're going to do for our vacation than asking really what a good life entails as a whole. Before we jump into some of the particularities of some of the questions and skills that you point to in the book, perhaps give us a sort of working definition of virtue ethics. People who listen to this program have heard a number of people describe that, but for you, give us kind of the key, most significant kind of contours or elements of what you think about when you think about what virtue ethics entails.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, when a lot of people hear the word virtue, it conjures like this Victorian woman who is very polite and very well dressed and totally pure and innocent. And that's not what we're talking about when we talk about virtue ethics. It's this tradition that actually got started in the Western world. It got started in ancient Greece with Plato and Socrates and Aristotle. And in the East, it got started with Confucius, roughly the same time. So about 2,400 years ago, 2,500 years ago. And the idea behind virtue ethics in these traditions is there are certain kinds of character traits and disciplines and practices that make human lives go really well. Ethics, having an ethics is like having a work ethic. It's like having this goal in mind about what those practices and habits are and having the drive to work on them and to try to develop them. Over time, philosophers have changed their mind about what exactly those goals should be. That the Greeks really prized courage as one of these virtues. And courage in ancient Greece meant, having the courage to face down the Spartans. Courage is still a virtue, but courage in 2022 looks pretty different than it looked like in ancient Greece. A virtue ethicist will help you ask first this question of, are you brave enough? And two, what does that actually look like in the context of the life that you're living? And are there other kinds of virtues? Are you trying to be a more loving parent? Are you trying to be somebody who cares more about the truth? One of the things that philosophers can lead us in thinking about is whether or not these kinds of traits that we're trying to develop are ones that we really understand why these are goals and why this would be good for our lives, or if they're just traits that other people are trying to push on us or just passing ideas. Virtue ethics is something that philosophers spend a lot of time on because it's these questions about what an excellent human life looks like, even in our own era, are questions that we've got to think hard about.
You frame up this exercise of asking questions as a central way of paying attention. Will you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so Socrates, that great founder of Greek philosophy, in all of his philosophical dialogues, he's always talking with his friends and he's always asking them questions. One of the practices that we encourage for our students and for our readers is to take somebody that you love and try to learn a little bit more about the stories that they're telling themselves about their good life. One of the ways Aristotle talks about love as becoming a second self to the person that you love, like getting involved in their perception of their life through questions. And we know this intuitively because we're already kind of practicing it. You might not even realize that it's philosophical, but maybe you're like on a long car ride with your partner or your kids or your parents, and you get bored and you start asking them to tell you stories. Like, tell me stories about your childhood in Las Vegas. Tell me a story about like why your boss drives you crazy. And if they're willing, they start to unspool the story. And a lot of times you feel the love in those moments. Like you feel like you're really getting to know that person. They're revealing or disclosing something about themselves to you. They're being vulnerable, maybe. That car ride conversation is a key example of this philosophical practice of trying to gently use questions and curiosity to let the people that you love include you in their inner mental life, the part of them that tells themselves stories about whether their life is going well or not. Not so that you can like decide how you're going to fix them or decide how you're going to make your next move, though maybe you'll get some insight about how to help them, but really just so that you can be part of their story, so that you can hear that internal story about their reasons for living the way that they're living and accept it. And maybe if things are going well, like Aristotle says, you can start to be a second self to them. You can start to like experience their life from the inside, which again, a lot of philosophers have thought the very essence of love is this ability that we have with people that we love to be a little bit on the inside of their life.